Hello gainers, I'm Ralphie. Welcome to my channel called Fitter Philosophy, and this is where I share my thoughts, opinions, perspectives and practical philosophy, which is mainly Stoic, and it's based primarily in the experience of life. And one of the experiences that I've had in my life has been caring for a relative who had dementia, and I'm going to share that with you. And the reason's simple. There's a lot of complex and difficult family situations arising because as people are getting older, they're more susceptible, we're all susceptible to a variety of relatively modern diseases, which a lot of which are linked to lifestyles. And I'm talking about diabetes from the overconsumption of processed food and sugar, primarily in breakfast cereal, confectionery, and, well, pick any sort of processed food. So much food contains sugar. And also cancer, and as you probably are aware, having done your research, cancer feeds directly from sugar. Sugar is the food for cancer. So the more sugar we consume, the more food we provide for the cancers growing inside of us, which generally happens a lot of the time, but the body manages with its own immune system to deal with it. But we're under more pressure than we have been historically as a species, as a collective humanoid species. And with environmental pressures and stresses, it's no wonder that cancer is more prevalent, diabetes is more prevalent, heart disease is more prevalent, primarily from the clogging up of our arteries. But of course, like so many things, it's more complex than that. And then there are the diseases which affect the mind, and that is Alzheimer's and dementia. And it's very, very frightening for people to have to address this, particularly in a relative connected with them. And the first thought is, well, perhaps they need to go to where they can be cared for properly, on the assumption that a family member cannot care for someone properly because they're not qualified and not experienced. Now, let me tell you from personal experience, that's nonsense. And I did it. I looked after my mother who had dementia. And I first became aware of it when I was phoning her twice a week, and I could hear the kind of tone in her voice changing. Of course, we were living in different countries, and it got to the stage one evening I'd phoned about half a dozen times, and eventually phoned a neighbour to check on her, and the neighbour said she's fine, it's just she's been out walking late at night. So I phoned her 2 days later, and there was no reply again until about near 10 p.m, which is very late for someone in their 70s to be out. So I asked her more pertinent questions. What have you had for tea? How are you feeling? And breaking the routine of my phone call, because we all get into phone call habits, I realised that she was in fact struggling but not admitting it. And I sat there and I had to make one of the biggest decisions in my life in less than 10 seconds. And what I said was, "Mum, do you want me to come over and look after you?" There was a pause at the other end of the phone, and her whole tone changed enormously. I could hear the relief in her voice. At which point there was no going back. I handed in my notice. I sold my house, and I flitted in a van everything over to the island where my mum was living to look after her. And it wasn't complex because this was the early stages of dementia, so it was quite practical. Making meals, making a cup of tea and providing a biscuit, someone to talk to, giving her a hug, giving her some cocoa before she went to bed. All these little, simple, practical things that were completely missing from her life, because to cope with dementia in her own world, she had simplified and simplified and simplified to the extent that she was virtually just drinking water and eating bread and biscuits, because that's all she could think about buying at the shops. And of course, with that situation, I didn't know this, but of course it makes sense. She was suffering from malnutrition, which would exacerbate her dementia. So it took a while to settle down, because I'm used to living on my own and I prefer it that way. But we both had our own little routines. Her physical health immediately improved because I was cooking proper meals. At this point, I did my research and I got some herbal supplements, devil's claw for arthritis, which made a big difference. Some ashwagandha, just for our immune system, made a big difference. It's not the prescription medication from doctors. At the early stages, it's the useful, well-sourced, and you've got to be careful where you source, herbal supplements which tip the balance in favour of health and wellness. And this, of course, has an impact, because what impacts the body positively impacts the mind. It's not a cure, but it slows things down considerably. Now, I looked after her for 10 years before she passed away, and there's absolutely no regrets, because it actually improved my quality of life significantly, because I wasn't having to work full time. It gave me one of the most precious and valuable commodities that we have in the modern world, and that is time. And that is why the establishment seek to use your time up for you. So be aware of that. Time is very precious. And because I looked after her and took her out for rides in the van and afternoon teas, and took her to the theatre, took her to see a brass band, took her to the shops, went long walks with her, when it came to her passing, it was actually fine. There was no tears, no traumas, no anger, no grief, because at that point I knew I'd done everything I could for her as a thank you for what she had done for me. And in the second part of this vlog, because this is a two-parter, I didn't mention this in the beginning, I'm going to talk about the practical situations that I encountered looking after someone with dementia, and I'm going to tell you how I coped with them, because many families around the world now are trying to live and support someone with dementia and Alzheimer's, and it can be very difficult. And there's certain things you've really got to be aware of. So I've made a list of them. I'm going to go over that in the next video. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this useful. I'm Ralphie, and this channel is Fit to Philosophy. If you've found this useful, click subscribe, click like, you bang the bell and all the rest of it. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.